But now we have our guest poet, Tom Phillips, who has got poetry in his very bones. Okay, and he's a very good poet too. I really enjoy. Yeah, I really enjoy reading him. He's got a new book out. It's called Recreation Ground, and I really value and respect the quality of the poetry in it. It's one of the best poets writing in Bristol at the moment. Okay, so we're going to have 5 now. Okay, five of your best poems. Tom Phillips. Okay.
Blimey.
Do you need a bit of light?
I think I'm going to stand here if that's all right.
Yes.
Because it's in kind of pale.
Tim, you couldn't raise the light, could you?
No, hang on. Oh, there we go. That's all right. I kind of do it slightly weirdly, off at an angle. As always. Yes, as Charles said, I have a new book. This is its first airing in Bristol. Hooray! Called Recreation Ground, and yes, I do have copies for sale. It collects poems from about the last 10 years and contains about 40, so it's a barn. So I'm going to start by reading a poem. Many years ago, or several years ago, I started doing strange things with my children, like take them to railway stations and just get on a train, not knowing where we were going. This is a kind of habit which had very far-reaching consequences. This is a poem about one of those early journeys, random train journeys, and it's called Not Really Climbing the Malvern Hills. Aiming to get away early, not from everything exactly, but roadworks, torn up roundabouts, insistence on improvement in continual redevelopment, we made the first train out of Temple Meads, barely noticing where it would take us, the slow stopping service to Malvern. 20 years since I walked this ridge, buckling out of Worcestershire, the abrupt scarp surprised us. Disappointment in the weather might well have turned us home from where fleshy rhododendra suggested provincial Victoriana, and a tea-room waiter's sniffy air suggested not much at all. A whole town tilted on a slope whose fortunes remain whoever's in the government, the stiff church headstones of those who believe they paid their dues for what they had received, small sacrifices earning just rewards. Only climbing granite steps through log fire smoke we spied an unexpected geography, stockaded new towns, arterial roads, like a railway modeller's indulgent scheme for tunnels and impossible curves. Chestnuts dripped rain onto gardens, secretive addresses a long way down, and gated gravel driveways carved up Middle England. High above them, we watched more clouds come in over Birmingham, then Worcester. Each new burst swept crumpled fields, caught us not entirely unawares, as we raced to a mossy clump of rock, the furthest along these hills we'd reached, misrising behind us on untroubled streets, where nothing will change, no matter what. As I say, this kind of habit of just going somewhere and not really knowing where you're going ended up with us going to Albania, as Charles alluded to earlier. So I thought I'd read a couple of poems about the said country. I'm not the only person in this room who actually loves Albania. There are at least 4 or 5, I think, actually. We went to the National Historical Museum in Tirana one day, and my son, Sam, who's now hiding, lost his hat. And there he is. And this poem is about that incident. It's called A Trophy. Somewhere, a small boy's hat beneath a sofa. Victory over all comers marches on the socialist realist mosaic on the National Historical Museum. The traffic's route snarls into gridlock. A gardener upends weeds around the tread of a captured tank. He lost it. He can't be sure. In the bourgeois deviationist era, unrevised captions finding reactionary intent in spectacled faces, or after Ottoman feudal resistance, and before the people's heroic struggle against fascist aggression. Curators drawing on cigarettes beneath fissured icons rummage between exhibits for a blue patch. A small boy races bareheaded through galleries left untended. like a line of beaters we advance. Mannequins sporting mountain dress, Roman mosaics and torsos, a partisan's bullet-hole jacket. Elsewhere, a small boy's hat's been found. From the walls of names and headshots, the documented dead look down. That's two, wasn't it? Another Albanian poet, has been mentioned. This is about a city in the north of the country called Shkodra, where it's probably worth knowing, well, certainly the last time we went, the time before last I went, I should say, people exhibited an unusual fascination with caged birds. Also refers to a very famous local legend about a woman who was walled up to make sure that the castle wouldn't fall down. And also to the Giro, which is the Albanian equivalent of the Passeggiata or the evening promenade. This is called ornithology in the Balkans. It wasn't the Muslim weddings that took your eye on that alluvial floodplain so much as bent wire cages under every tree, goldfinches less than common soliciting between trapped black squirrels and a dove. At Giro hour, along streets of dark stairwells, the hawkers were out, their not-so-fair trade luring buyers who swooped on bargains, took promises of health and long life as more than hot air. On the fly, you might have been taken in by flashes of iridescence or plain song. And in the mountains of another country, the rumoured eagles were predominantly crows. But here, above this disputed town, its castle flaunts a history of sieges in so many collapsing terraces. The milk-white dribble between stones, they say, seeps from the breasts of a wife immured to satisfy gods. And across the promontory's ruined terrain, we were trying to work out which wall had belonged to which religion, when against the faithless sky a squadron flew in, dandy pigeons stumbling around, wild birds hunting for a roost in feathery galoshes. Careful planning of putting these pieces of paper is actually just a complete. I remember looking at the index now. It's sort of like having a radical change of plan, but it's not really. I write quite a lot of poems when I'm walking to and from work, which has the unfortunate side effect that many of them sound the same. But this is the kind of distillation of my walking home poems. And it's set in Bristol, and it's called Wearing Thin. Going home with decisions unmade and threats of further paperwork, you're jostling for position at a crossing point, taking the light's delay as reluctance, the pavement for a starting grid, as if a whole town could do its best to hold you back, or that stained glass triptych of a church's nominal saints had been set there to lord it over epidemic rumours, determined indignation. Out in the river, a cormorant's neck snags the current. What might be flickers across lifestyle smiles on emphatic development hoardings. A bank declares its lending rate intent on your interest, or diverts you to career-changing posters, temp agency chances. As red turns to green, you've almost reached the other side before you're pulled up short by a misread fashion headline. You are what you were. I've tried very hard never not to read this poem, but it always seems to happen. It's a love poem dedicated to my wife, Sarah, who's over there. Still, amazingly, yeah. And this is a poem called Porter's Head. Amazing how that makes people laugh. Sorry. All through her second wedding, your sister carried white lilies. She chose Psalm 23, and we duly mumbled, "The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want," thinking this is more like a funeral, and trying not to giggle at the serious bits. You dug me in the ribs and said, with more feeling than you meant, that this is what passes to life in Porter's Head. Outside, we nipped out for a fag during a bide with me, tiptoeing past weeping aunts and teenage sons in suits they bought for work experience, a row of bulging parcels waiting for collection. Outside you breathed again, and then you said how glad you were you'd escaped what passes for life in Portishead. And when he kissed me in the graveyard with lots of dead confetti like giant flakes of dandruff, I was thinking, yes, thank God. Thank God. If it hadn't been for this town's deep chill, its icy politeness and evening classes, its Sunday lunch drinks and overcooked roast, the dismal rain of the lake grounds of a Saturday night, if it hadn't been for the gossip which spread like a bushfire when you dyed your hair red and started hanging out with unsuitable types who played in punk bands like Chaos UK or limped along the high street on farting Lambrettas, if it hadn't been for this town's desire to disapprove of all it didn't understand, you'd never have run for Cornwall and the sea. You'd never have run for a place of your own, and you'd never have run into me. In the doorway of the church, I almost smiled and I almost said, there are so many reasons I'm grateful for what passes for life in Portishead.
Oh dear. I won't be able to go to Portishead ever again right now. You've absolutely done it for me. You've absolutely done it for me. You've absolutely... I used to love going down to Portishead. That was a fantastic poem. So thank you very much. They're beautifully written. And that was a wonderful cork of a last poem to finish with. And the book is available at...
from me now.
at a good price. I've got a copy and I really am enjoying reading it. Okay, so I think... Thank you, Tom. That was fantastic. Let's give Tom another round of applause because he's one of the...